So again, welcome everybody. This is the webinar series by Dr. Donald Martin. Now we have been running, we have covered a lot of topics in detail about the application process, the overall part of it. And today we are going to discuss a very, very important aspect, which is about the financial aid. And we have combined this for the bachelor's and the master's students because most of the things are going to be the same. There are definitely some peculiarity about the master's admissions, which will be covered. This will be followed by another session where you will get an opportunity to ask additional questions from the previous all the webinars also. So we will be summarizing what we have been covered in our next webinar. And at the same time, whatever your questions which will be there in any of the essay part of it, your resume preparation part of it, how to select the universities part of it, or including today's financial aid topic we will be covering. Those of students who are new to today's webinar, Dr. Donald Martin, you may be knowing was admissions dean at University of Chicago, Columbia University. You may be knowing Columbia University is now Ivy League University, and the Booth School of Business, University of Chicago. US News has given #1 business schools in United States. He was also working in the Northwestern University, Wheaton College. Huge exposure into the student, almost like 1,25,000 applications he has in his 28 years of the application process handling. He has individually handled. He knows in and out of the admission process. He has been counseling the students from different countries, more than 50 countries. His regular writing. He has written a great book, a roadmap to graduate study. It's a 105-page book, very crisp, which is put his all his exposure and experience. Anybody wants, please do send me your address. We will ship it that book free of cost. We are not charging any money for that particular book, but that is something a great, really point by point, how you should be preparing for 1 year in advance, what you should be expected to do, and how you will be choosing the universities. So today's topic is not taking much time. I will request Dr. Donald Martin to take forward these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dioris. And hello, everyone. Welcome back for those of you who are joining us again for another webinar together. And for those of you who are here for the first time, please let me add my welcome to that of Dr. Dioris. We're so glad you're here as well. And this is a very important webinar, as all of them are. But I will say, many times in speaking with prospective students, whether they are aspiring to a college career or to graduate study, the issue of finances almost always comes up. It's obviously a critical component to the successful completion of any graduate program. So that is why we wanted to devote an entire webinar today to this topic. It is very critical, and there's some very important information I want to share. Before that, I just want to briefly introduce my colleague, Ms. Deborah Zakarian, who's joining us today. Deborah is a counsel coach with our group. She has worked with both graduate students and will be working with undergraduate students this year. So you won't get to hear from Deborah today, but I wanted you to know she's here. Deborah, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Don. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, those of you who have been with us for other webinars, you know what the first topic is going to be, and that's the biggest mistake prospective students make every year. But then I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time going over some general information about financial aid, 12 different pieces of information, some general information for both undergraduates and graduates. Some of this will be specific to undergrads, others to graduates, but 12 different very important pieces of general information about financial aid. Then I'm going to talk about some other 12 tips again about this. I will have some special tips toward the end. Then I'll briefly discuss the work that Ms. Deborah and I are doing with Astute. Then we're going to take your questions. Just let me say, Dr. Dioris has never asked me to say this at all, but I'm saying it because it's true. Those of you who are aware of the Astute Academy and may be working with this wonderful organization, you are very fortunate. It is the best in all of India. The vision and direction that Dr. Dioris has provided for Astute over the years is amazing. I've had the privilege of working with him and his team for over 10 years now, and I'm increasingly grateful that I was given this opportunity. So if you have any opportunity to engage with Astute, I encourage you to do it because you're in for a wonderful, wonderful experience. Okay, let's jump right in here. And I'm going to ask you a question, as I do. For those of you that are here for the first time, what do you think is the biggest mistake prospective, I should have put college and graduate students make here? What do you think it is? I'll give you a few seconds if you're hearing this for the first time. Just curious to know what, there are lots of mistakes you can make, but what do you think is the biggest mistake? Okay. The biggest mistake prospective college and graduate students make is not doing adequate research before you apply. As I've mentioned many times in this webinar series and all of the webinars that I give, oftentimes prospective students decide where they're going to apply based on only two criteria: a ranking or a level of prestige, shall we say, and word of mouth. Someone has gone to this institution or someone tells you this is where you should consider going, and so you just accept their word. Now, word of mouth and rankings are not completely useless, but if that's the only criteria you're using, I think you're shortchanging yourself. I often do what's called a shortlisting for Dr. Dioris and the Astute team. When a student indicates what type of degree they are seeking and where they're looking for some possible options to where to pursue that program, I will do a shortlist for them. Do you know how many institutions I will usually suggest that that student consider initially? Now, of course, not applying to all of these, but initially considering them. Not 2, not 5, not 10, usually 40 to 50. There are so many outstanding undergraduate and graduate programs here in the US, thousands of them. And it's not there's not only 10 good options for a particular student. There could be many. So I encourage you, please spread the net wide, do your research, and remember, please remember that your perception about where you want to study is what happens after you've done your research, not before you start out. It's not where you begin, it's where you end after you've really taken a close look at many options. I encourage you to do this. For the students that I have worked with, I can't tell you how many times this has changed their decision on where they will apply and where they will attend because they did their homework. In my book, to which Tushar referred, and by the way, some of the things in that book apply to undergraduates just as they do graduates. And in the first chapter about the research process, I suggest 26 different areas to compare between the options you're considering. 26, and there's probably more. So please don't limit your search and don't limit the criteria that you're going to use in your search. Spread that net wide, okay? Do your homework. 3 words, do your research, okay? All right, now, I want to provide you a few general thoughts about financial aid. Then we're going to get into those 12 points that are very important that I want to discuss. First of all, Some international students, not just in India, but around the world, have this idea that there is an unending supply of money at US colleges and universities. And this is just not true. There is financial aid available, as we'll see here shortly, but there is not this ongoing, unending supply of money. And most students, not all, but most undergraduate and master's degree students are most likely going to have to share in paying for their education. It will not be completely free of charge. So we need to make sure, and I have to say this in the United States sometimes as well, there's not an unending supply of money here at whatever the institution, whether it's very well-known institutions or some that may not be as well-known, it doesn't matter. There's not this unending wealth of financial aid dollars available. Second, make sure that as you do your research, remember that word, good research, please, I always recommend you create a spreadsheet and you list all of your options on that spreadsheet, and then you start filling in some areas of information about them. If you do that, one of the areas you should be filling in for each option is what do they offer international students by way of financial aid. Make sure that you are checking this out before you apply, not after you get admitted. For some things, it might be too late by then. So make sure that ahead of time, you know what each of your options offers international students. Sometimes it might be similar. Other times there could be varying ways in which institutions provide funding for international students. Thirdly, you can receive additional aid after you enroll. In other words, if you're going to be a college student in a 4-year bachelor's degree, or you're coming into a master's program that could be 2 or 3 years long, it's very possible that in your second year or your third year or your final year, you could receive some additional financial aid over and above what was awarded in the first year. So don't assume that your first year financial aid package is all you're ever going to be able to receive. There could be more options down the road for each additional year that you are in the program. All right, now we're going to move to 12 very important pieces of information about international student financial aid at US colleges and universities. 12, I hope you'll write some of these down, if not all of them. And let me start with this. Many students are concerned that there will be no loan assistance available for them if they do not hold citizenship or permanent residency in the United States. Well, I'm happy to tell you that in many cases, now this may not be at every institution, but in many cases, there are private loans available to international students. However, there is one condition. They must have a cosigner who resides in the United States. There must be someone in the US who will cosign for that loan application. Now, if you are, of course, from another country, but you've achieved US citizenship or you are a permanent resident, then you are available for all of the federal loan programs that undergraduates and graduates receive. You will just need to complete a form called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You'll have to complete that in order to be considered. But even if that is not your situation, if you're not a citizen or a permanent resident, there still could be loan assistance available for you as an undergraduate or as a graduate student. By the way, I wanted to mention this earlier. I love questions, and we're going to leave some time at the end of this webinar to answer any questions you may have as we go through this presentation. So please, it looks like we already have a few questions in the Q&A box. Please keep them coming, and I'll do my best to answer any and all of them at the conclusion of my remarks. Okay, number two, most of the time, there are two types of scholarship assistance available to international students. One is called merit-based aid. The other is called need-based aid, okay? Merit-based aid usually is based largely on academics. Now, there could be some other components on occasion. There could be extracurricular activities, leadership, other recognition you may have had. It's possible, but most of the time, the large component of merit-based award is your academic performance leading up to this program of study. Need-based awards can vary greatly depending on the state in which the institution is located and the institution itself. There's lots of different ways that can be determined. But so that's the difference. A merit-based aid is strictly that. It's based on the merit of the candidate, the applicant who has been admitted coming in. Okay, number three. Here's something you definitely want to check. If you're creating a spreadsheet, I encourage you to put this on your spreadsheet. Does the institution offer what's called in-state tuition? If you have lived in a particular state for a specified period of time, then you could be considered as a resident of that state. And therefore, if so, and they have what's called in-state tuition, you could qualify for that. And in some instances, the difference is absolutely monumental. It could be as much as 50% less than the regular tuition for out-of-state students. So this is something to check on your spreadsheet, put it down. And by the way, in-state and out-of-state tuition tends to apply mostly for undergraduate students, a little bit less for graduate study. It's possible in a few cases, but unlikely. But most of the time, this would be for undergraduates. So please check that out. Number four, some universities and institutions may use standardized tests, not only for possible consideration for admission. And let me just stop here and say that that is changing rapidly in terms of how much institutions will use test scores to help them in the admission process. That's fluctuating. As you know, some schools aren't even using test scores at all in the evaluation process. But my point is, they could use test scores to help for scholarship consideration. Let's just take the SAT for high school students applying for college. If your SAT score would be, say, 1,300 or higher, or at the graduate level, if your GRE combined score is, say, 325 or higher, it's possible that that could be a criteria or a component for a financial aid office to consider as they prepare your financial aid package. All right. Keep those questions coming if you have any. I see a few more, so keep them coming. All right, number five, need-based scholarships often do take into consideration parental income. This is at the undergraduate and the graduate level. If you are still considered to be under your family tree or under your family's jurisdiction, and you maybe still live at home, or whatever that may be, then need-based scholarships will take into consideration parental income. There will be an assumption that if you're still considered part of your family, you haven't moved out, let's say, and established your own independent home at this point, then that inner income is going to be considered as part of how much it is expected that you would need to help to fund your education. Again, this is for both undergraduates and graduate students, the same. For undergraduates, there are some documents you will need to complete as an international student. through the College Board that are listed here to, again, add information there regarding your current financial situation and that of your parents, if that's necessary. Okay, we're almost halfway through. These points do not take that long to discuss, but they're very, very important. So point number 6, I'm now going to talk about some undergraduate opportunities, and then in a few more slides, I'm going to talk about some graduate opportunities. So first, for undergraduate, there could be some part-time employment positions available on campus. This could involve working for between maybe 10, 20 hours a week. This is not a standard across all. Again, there's not one particular way this is administered across all institutions. But it should, if you get some sort of this, it will either be offered as a part of your financial aid package, or it could be something separate from a financial aid package. If it's in the financial aid package, typically this is referred to as work study, the work study opportunity. If it isn't, it may just be that they've selected some areas of the college or university where they need some student help, and they will hire an international student for up to 20 hours a week to help them out. So there's one of two ways this can be done, but it is often available for undergrads. Also, if you are on the dean's list, if you've been doing very well or you've been admitted to an honors college, this could result in additional scholarship assistance. Let's say in your first year of college, you are on the dean's list, which usually means you have a very high GPA, whatever they specify. If you do that for your entire freshman year, it's possible that you could receive an additional scholarship or additional merit-based aid in the second year, your sophomore year, and so forth. AP credits, advanced placement, this is very, very helpful too. This can not only perhaps influence an admission decision for you as an undergraduate, but it also could help with being admitted to an honors college and additional scholarship help. All of these things, again, there's not one way each institution does this, but these are possibilities and things that you should keep in mind as you go through your high school years, 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th, 12th, that you are making sure to keep track of some of these things, especially with respect to AP credit. And then once you get into your undergraduate program, being on the dean's list, they could very well make a difference. Tip number 8. Now, at the graduate level, there may not be these part-time employment options as much, but there could be what's called teaching and research assistantships. They are generally offered by professors, and they don't typically occur for master's students in your first year. It is more likely these would be available in this. Now, it's possible a faculty member may take a special interest in an incoming master's student, and they might offer him or her this, but usually it's in the second year, except for doctoral students. If you are admitted to a doctoral program, it is very common and very possible that you could be offered a teaching or a research assistantship starting your first year. That is very likely, but not so much at the master's level. These typically will take place in the second year, but they can provide almost full funding. If you receive a teaching assistantship, that usually pays for everything. You get everything covered. They're very generous offers. Tip number 9, also for graduate students. It is possible that separate from those teaching or research assistantship, that faculty members sometimes receive what's called a government grant. They will submit a proposal for some sort of project or research they wish to work on, perhaps for a paper they're writing, a book they are writing, and they will submit a proposal and they are funded. They're given funding to undertake this project or this research. And that funding could include hiring 1 or 2 graduate students to work with them. So that's a possibility. Typically, again, this would happen in someone's second year of their program, so that during the first year, they have a chance to get to know the faculty members they're studying with. And the competition can be pretty heavy, because if there's only one opening for this faculty member, there could be 10 or 15 students that are interested. But nonetheless, in addition to a standard teaching or research assistantship, this opportunity is possible and does occur quite often, to work specifically with a faculty member on their project or their grant. Okay, tip number 10. Now we're back to both information for both undergrads and graduates. Sometimes individual departments will offer some sort of a competition for their students. Maybe it's an essay competition. Maybe it's a speech or an oral presentation that you give, and you actually have a chance to compete with other students in a very friendly way. This isn't a bad type of competition, but everyone is encouraged to enter, and there can be a monetary award for the winner or winners. Maybe they'll say, we're going to select 3 winners: the bronze medal, the silver medal, and then the gold medal, or something to that effect. And these monetary awards aren't enormous, but they can definitely help. It could be a couple $100. It could be $1,000. It could be maybe 2,000, maybe more. So these don't happen all the time, but it's not uncommon, or it's not unheard of, that a particular program or a department might conduct some sort of a competition. And obviously, if you're in that department, it would behoove you to take advantage of that, because it could end up resulting in some additional financial help for you. Okay, 2 more tips. Number 11. This is something to really keep in mind for those of you who are in programs that are longer than 1 year. If you're an undergraduate, of course, you're going to be for 4 years, and most master's students are in their program for longer than 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. There are new scholarships that are being added for merit-based or need-based purposes every year. One of the areas where donors, individuals who support a particular institution, where they really enjoy getting involved, is giving money to help students who need it. So there could be new scholarships coming in. There could also be new employment opportunities. A department all of a sudden decides in a given year that they would like to hire an international student to work with them or for them. So my point here is, again, don't assume that once you enroll and have your first year financial aid package, that's all you'll ever get. That's not true. You could get more. So what does that mean? I would suggest at least just once a term. Please don't do this over and over again. Please don't keep going in and asking all the time. But once a term, probably more toward the end of the term, just before final exams, you can go into the financial aid office and ask if there are any new scholarship or employment opportunities that have become available that you might apply for. This is you can do that, but just don't overdo it. Sometimes we had students when I was at Columbia or the University of Chicago Booth School of Business or Northwestern, we'd have students come in almost every week. And they were well-intentioned. They weren't being rude, but they would just come in every week and say, do you have any new, financial aid? And that was just a little too much. But once a term, I would suggest right before finals, that's the time to go in. There's nothing wrong with checking. All they can say is no. And some cases they could say yes. And there might be something available for you that you didn't know about when you first started in that particular academic year. Okay, our final tip. Again, as I said, merit scholarships are generally based on academics, but they can also include other things. And if you really want to strategize, and prepare for your undergraduate work and for your graduate work. We would encourage you as an undergraduate student to start, if you want to work with astute, and I hope many of you already are or are seriously considering this, we have a mentoring program for aspiring undergraduates that starts as early as the 9th standard, and I probably should put here, or starting in the freshman year of college. We are able to mentor you, Ms. Deborah and I, and the very qualified astute team, all of us together. We can offer mentoring help to help you strategize and receive guidance for both the academic and the non-academic. They're both important. And we can help you as you think about how to position yourself when you get to the 12th standard or your senior year of college. Sometimes by then it can be a little too late. You've already almost finished your high school experience or your college experience. It's hard to go back and at that point try to add something to help you be more competitive for financial aid assistance. But when you start out earlier on, you have several years to build and create a more robust resume, a more robust CV, a more unique and well-rounded background, so that when you are applying and you get admitted, you've already done what you could do to maximize your chances of receiving financial aid. So keep in mind, there's lots of ways to be considered for this aid, and we as Astute and Ms. Deborah and I, in conjunction with Astute, would welcome the opportunity to work with any of you as you prepare for this upcoming educational experience, be it at the undergraduate or the graduate level. Okay, so those are the 12 important general pieces of information that I wanted to share today. We could share a lot more, but I believe those are some of the most important that we share with you. Now, some closing special tips, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the work, as I said, that Ms. Deborah and I do. And then it looks like we have at least 5 questions that have come in. I hope there's going to be more. That usually does happen. We've got plenty of time, so please keep them coming. Any questions about anything I said or didn't say? If you have any other questions about the undergraduate application process or the graduate process, whatever, feel free to put those questions in the Q&A box. Okay, once again, in review, do not expect an institution to necessarily cover all of your expenses. The only time that would be most likely to happen is if you are an incoming PhD student. In that case, yes, oftentimes all of your expenses will be covered. But other than that, they are usually not covered entirely. Number 2, don't assume that the award you get in your first year is the only amount you're ever going to receive, or that's it, that you will never have a chance to receive more scholarship help. As we said, if you're on the dean's list, you get awarded a teaching or research assistantship, or you get to work with a faculty member on a grant, you win a competition, or you receive there's all kind of employment opportunities. There are many ways to continue to build on your financial aid after that first year. So don't despair. Don't assume that that's all you will ever receive, is just what they're giving you for the first term or the first year. Number 3, again, you can ask about other opportunities. What did we suggest there? Once a term toward the end of the term, around finals time, go in and ask if there's any new employment or scholarship opportunities available. Check with your department director or your department head. Are there any faculty grants that have come in? Are there any faculty looking for someone to help them? You can do this. Just don't do it all the time. Don't become a pest. That will cause them to be less likely to want to help you if you keep coming in and bothering them all the time. But once a term is perfectly acceptable. Next, obviously, as we were saying, do your best academically all the way along, as wherever you are in your journey right now, as a high school student or as an undergraduate, wherever you may be, no one's perfect. No one ever does everything perfectly. We're not looking, admissions folks are not looking for perfection. I promise you that. There's no perfect application. I've never seen one, mine included. No one can check every single box perfectly. But that said, there are outstanding applications. And maybe you're not going to have a straight A average every term, but you want to do make your academic work a priority. After all, that's one of the main reasons you're in your high school and you're in your undergraduate experience. Make that do the very best you can. Be committed to doing outstanding academic work, because the higher the grades, the better they are, then the more likelihood of your being considered, certainly, for a merit-based scholarship. And as I think it would go without saying, but international students are just as much eligible for merit-based scholarships as U.S. citizens are. When I worked at Columbia, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Wheaton College, once we knew who was admitted, every single one of those individuals was taken into consideration for merit-based scholarships. It wasn't as though we said, only these students in the US will get merit-based scholarships. These international students won't be considered. Absolutely not. Merit-based scholarships are for everyone who's been admitted most of the time, 99% of the time. So do your best. And again, if you believe it would help you to receive some mentoring help along the way, to give you guidance on how to put together your academic work, your extracurricular involvement, your profile, if you will, profile building. That's what we're talking about. We would be delighted to enter in and work with you if we could ever be of help. Lastly, I want to share this too. Please remember that financial aid policies and guidelines can change quite often. You may have already discovered this, but in the United States, from one year to the next, the federal government can make a change in the way financial aid is administered, or the way loans are administered, or an institution may decide they're going to handle their merit scholarships in a new way. After having done it a certain way for 5 years, they make a change. And you don't always know when these changes are occurring. So just keep in mind that from one year to the next, something could change that could affect the type of aid you may receive. This is just standard practice in the US. It's not as though a financial aid policy is put in place at the federal or state level or at an institutional level, and then it never changes and it's always the same. Sometimes these things change over time. So just a couple of special tips to keep in mind there. Now, as we move to our closing comments here, I see we already have 10 questions. That's wonderful. Keep them coming. Whatever you want to ask me, I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have. And let me just say here that I believe it's 2 weeks from today, on Monday, August the 22nd, we are going to have a complete recap of all the webinars we've given so far, some of the highlights that we're going to cover from them. And then we're basically just going to open it up to answer questions. And I just hope we get a ton of them. I hope you're already thinking about joining us on August the 22nd, and that you're already thinking of some questions then that you might want to ask me. Okay, Ms. Deborah and I have been working with a student. I've been with them for over 10 years, Deborah more recently. It has been exactly what this says, a very close and very, very beneficial and rewarding association. Of the students we've worked with, the acceptance rate has been very high. Most all of them, if not all of them, I think Dr. Dioris can speak to that better than I, but it's been wonderful. The number of students who have been admitted that we have worked with. Our process works. What we know works. This, my experience combined with the phenomenal experience of Dr. Dioris and his team has come together to create a very, very successful situation with those we work with. Next, for undergraduate applicants, we can start mentoring as early as the 9th standard. As I said, we can do, Ms. Deborah saw an article here from US News and World Report that came out not too long ago that we wanted to share with you. This might be worth your taking a look at. But again, getting started in your planning for a successful undergraduate education starts, we believe, in the 9th standard. Graduate students, again, it starts in your freshman year of college, not when you're just getting ready to graduate. So once again, mentoring, we can start doing this as early as the freshman year if there are questions or issues where you would like our feedback. And remember, we've been able to assist with many things, but certainly school search, resume prep, we do that all the time. Of course, essay review, recommender strategy. Let me just say a quick word about recommenders. We're going to be doing a whole session on this in September. We're going to be talking about recommendation letters because this is often a very forgotten part of the application process. It's taken, people don't think about it. In the 28 years that I worked as a dean of admissions, reviewing those tens of thousands of applications over that time, 90 to 95% of the time, yes, that's that, you didn't mishear me. 90 to 95% of the time, recommendation letters were meaningless. They didn't help. In fact, they hurt an applicant. It's very important how you structure your letters of recommendation and who you ask and how you help to prepare them to write those letters for you. So all of these things we can talk about with you at any stage of your high school or your college career, and we would be delighted to have that opportunity to do that. I better stop talking because we now have 12 questions that have come in, and I bet we're going to get even more. So with that, let me just say thank you so much for staying tuned with me today, for listening. I hope this information has been helpful to you as you consider the financial aspect of your education, be it at the college or the master's degree level. And I hope to get to work with some of you and hear from some of you. Ms. Deborah and I both do in the coming weeks. With that, Dr. Dioris, thank you again for the incredible privilege of working with you and the astute team. I am now going to turn it over to you. Let me just say one other thing here. We wish all of you much success in your educational and professional career. Okay, back to questions. And Dr. Dioris, I will turn the microphone over to you at this time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really, this was very, very complex topic, and it is really very well covered. There are so great opportunities. It is available if you create a profile well and work into that. Even after going, as Dr. Donald Martin has told, it's really a great opportunity. Let's come with now the question answer part of it.
All right.
So there is a question, what about the external scholarship like Davis UWC scholarship, Next Genius program, etc.?
Dr. Dioris, was this person asking about outside scholarships?
Yeah, outside external scholarship like Davis and all. So those scholarships additionally. So there are scholarships which are individual persons also gives it.
There are quite a few outside scholarships available. And what I would recommend, obviously, this individual has already done some research on that. There are all kinds of them. And what I would strongly recommend is if you contact the financial aid office of one of the institutions you're considering, they may have a full range of pieces of information on those scholarships that often their students receive from outside, or you can also do a search on the internet. You can plug in outside scholarships for undergraduate study, or you could be more specific, outside or special scholarships for undergraduate study in mathematics, psychology, biology, business, mechanical engineering. You could, and similarly at the graduate level, outside scholarships for graduate study in law, medicine, business, again, any field of study. And the Astute team may have some resources that they offer in this regard, but there is some information out there, a wealth of it, on outside scholarship opportunities. And usually, just in case you're wondering, if you were, let's just say you received a $5,000 or $10,000 outside scholarship to help fund your undergraduate or graduate education. Typically, an institution will utilize that as a merit-based part of a merit-based scholarship that you are given, and they won't reduce their merit-based scholarship for, let's say they've already awarded you a $20,000 merit scholarship, and they find out that you received a $10,000 outside scholarship. They're not going to reduce your scholarship. They will increase the total. It'll be $30,000, $20,000 from them, $10,000 from the outside scholarship. So it is definitely worth. Thank you for asking that question. It's a very good one.
Yeah, and every university lists down those such scholarships. If we go to the individual websites of the universities, they do provide the information. Another question, very interesting question, is how to approach the teaching assistantship and research assistantship. So what will be the criteria and how early we should be starting on doing this?
Great question. Let me start for undergraduates. For undergraduates, this is very unlikely that there would be a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship for an undergrad. It may be that you'd have an opportunity to work in a lab of some sort, but to be actually given a teaching or research assistantship is less likely. At the graduate level, absolutely more likely. And what you want to do, first of all, you want to check the financial aid page of the on the website of the institutions you're considering, and specifically look for any information they offer there about whether they have research or teaching assistantships available. If they do provide the information there, they will also usually disclose how they make that award, what you have to do to receive it, what they're looking for, what the qualifications are. If you don't see it there, if you are admitted to the institution, you could ask that question after you're admitted. Do you offer research or teaching assistantships, and how would I apply for one? And then, and if they do, maybe they'll say, well, these are awarded in the second or third or fourth year. Then when you get to campus, you would want to follow up with your department and with the financial aid office to make sure that you aren't missing out on any of the information of what to do if you want to receive one of these awards. I hope that helps. It's a good question.
Yeah. Can the teaching assistantship or research assistantship can be revoked if you don't perform well?
Yeah, that's a very good question too. I would say that yes, if someone is truly not performing their responsibilities in the way that they were told to, or what was part of the agreement when they took this position, what would most likely happen is that they would not immediately have it revoked. It would not just automatically, they would say, okay, you're done. What would most likely happen is that the faculty member or the person who is serving as your supervisor would have a conversation with you and say, we have a few concerns we'd like to discuss with you. And sometimes oftentimes that really helps. And that student may not have realized that something wasn't the way it should be, and they can work to improve it and things can continue. I will say, I very rarely ever heard of a time when someone's research or teaching assistantship was taken away from them. I know it can happen, but it would be very rare. Most of the time, students do extremely well in these positions. And if there is a problem, it's discussed openly when the problem is occurring, and they have a chance to take some time to improve, and that usually works out. It's very rare that it would be revoked, but I'm glad you asked.
Thank you. Do we need to write a letter or essay for applying for scholarships?
Great question. Yes, there are times that you will be required. Sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't. Once again, on the financial aid website, there could be information about some sort of a special scholarship or a special merit-based award. It could be called the President's Award or the Platinum Award or the Dean of Students Award. And there's a specified amount of money. And in order to be considered for that scholarship, you have to write an essay. That's a little less likely, but it does happen, especially at the graduate level, not so much at the undergraduate level. But there could be times, but if you're doing your research, we go back to that important word. If you're doing your research, then on your spreadsheet, hopefully you have a column that says, are there any special scholarships and do I have to complete an essay for them? And if a new scholarship opportunity becomes available and you are informed about it, they would, of course, let you know if you have to fill out an essay for that particular award. But yes, sometimes you will.
I'm already a 11th stand international board IB student. Can I join the mentoring program now also?
Dr. Dioris, I think you're in the best position to answer that question. I would think it's yes, but I'll let you take that.
Yes. Yeah, you can join anytime. The more the time you get, we can create a better profile. That's the question.
Absolutely, yes.
Are there any university-specific scholarships funded by organization or the government?
There are typically not, I would not say government-funded scholarships within institutions. There could be outside scholarships available that might be from an organization in the United States, but typically the only type of financial aid that the U.S. government offers is in the form of loan dollars for U.S. citizens or permanent residents. But as we said earlier, there are other outside scholarship opportunities, a wealth of them, yes.
I want to go to Ivy League university with the scholarship. Is there any minimum test scores which is recommended?
Well, this is a great question. And as Dr. Dioris, I know, has been informing the audience here of astute, and what Ms. Deborah and I are also doing our best to inform people about is the fact that test scores are becoming a bit less of a factor in college and graduate school admissions. Some institutions are waiving them entirely. They're saying we won't even look at them. Others are making them optional, and then others are requiring them. If they are optional and you submit scores, or of course, if they're required, then yes, it is possible that for an Ivy League institution or others, that the test scores would enter in to a decision on merit-based aid. Yes, that is very possible.
There are state universities as well as the private universities. For international student, is there any difference in the scholarships part of it?
No, that's a great, no, there really isn't. It's more a matter of how much financial aid is available at these institutions, but whether it's a public or private university, they still have access to There's not a difference to the student. At public institutions may receive, in addition to federal funding for loan purposes, they could receive state funding for some of their financial aid programs, which increases their budget. But in terms of the way they determine who will receive scholarships or merit-based or need-based, there is no difference there.
If your extracurricular overpower your academics, you are better in extracurricular than academics, are we still eligible for need-based scholarships?
Yes, you could be eligible for need-based scholarships. Again, need is just that. How much are they suggesting you need in order to attend this institution? And if, by the way, there is a plausible, reasonable, understandable, persuasive explanation about your academic record, if it is not as strong, but perhaps there's a reason for that. Perhaps there's a valid reason for what happened. Then, yes, you could be considered for need. Again, as Dr. Dioris has mentioned, and I, preparing a profile, a complete profile, means highlighting the strengths that you have in every area of your application, both academic and non-academic. They all play a role. So yes, that your extracurricular activities could be considered both for merit-based aid in some instances. We did this at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Our merit-based awards were not so, they started with academics, but it wasn't only academics that entered into that decision. So that's why extracurricular involvement can play a role here, very much so.
If the student is already studying in United States and then the family faces some financial problem or critical issues, can we get a support from university or any non-governmental or governmental organizations?
Good question. It would depend on your visa status, your residency status for one thing. But yes, if assuming that your parental or family financial information has been disclosed and is part of the information you're submitting to be considered for financial aid, and if something changes and all of a sudden that financial situation completely, let's say it goes down, so a parent happens to be laid off or somehow cannot work for a period of time, or something drastically changes, oh my gosh, yes, by all means, what I would encourage you to do before completing any paperwork is to immediately go into the financial aid office and tell them something has happened here. This is what happened to my family, to my parents, whatever, and get guidance there. Yes, every year the financial aid office decides on awards, merit or need based on the current financial information of that student. They don't go a year or two back. They're going to look at what they're facing currently. So if there's been a change, definitely let them know that. And yes, that could make a difference in the type of financial aid you would be awarded.
Yes. And definitely during this pandemic times, many things, such things has already happened. And universities has really provided lots of support to the students.
Yep.
Who the parents have suffered due to pandemic lockdowns and all these things. Some things which is definitely they will be considering part of it.
I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Dioris, because you're absolutely right. Universities have really stepped up, I believe, and
Yes.
been cognizant of the fact that this has been very difficult for many families, and they can't work miracles. They can't necessarily pay for everything, but they are certainly. Thank you for sharing that. That's an excellent point.
So in the College Board, there are big future scholarships which is listed. Okay, so what are those scholarships?
I don't know. I know they change every year. I'm not sure what they are, but I'm going to assume and Dr. Dioris may have more information on this part than I do, but I'm assuming this is an up-to-date list on some outside scholarships that might be available or that the college board may be involved with, and that this list changes and is updated every year. That would be my sense.
Yeah, that's right. So the organizations or specific NGOs or maybe individual persons approach the college board. This type of scholarships are available if any students are interested. Again, the CSS profile and our ad hoc is going to be very, very critical in getting this part of it, the things. One student, Madhurao, has really appreciated this seminar and give you the thanks for explaining such in great detail.
You're most welcome.
Yeah. So can undergraduate students, international students on F1 visa can do the internships into the companies?
I believe so. Now, again, some companies have their own visa policies, or they will work with a student in order to ensure that they have proper documentation for that. But yes, it's generally my understanding that you would be able to do an internship on an F1 visa.
Yes, it is the CPT and OPT, curricular practical training. So if it is related to your area of specialization, definitely university can endorse it, and you can work into those organizations as an internship. But definitely summer break is a big break. Many students work 3.5 months into that part of it. It is definitely this possible part of it.
That's right.
Yeah. One student has asked, can you please repeat the book title written by Dr. Donald Martin? So
it's called Roadmap for Graduate Study, a guide for prospective graduate students. And Dr. Dioris is making this a generous offer to you. If you reach, I believe if you reach out to Astute, they will send you a free copy.
Can statement of purpose also help in getting the scholarships?
That is a very good question. I don't know that I would say that a statement of purpose influences so much a scholarship decision as it does a decision on admission. Strong statements of purpose, very well written, that are in the voice of the applicant, by the way. That's critical. In the applicant's voice, strong essays will make a difference and can help with admission. Typically, it is more likely the information that you are providing in your resume or your CV or the other types of questions in the application about your activities, other things that they're wanting to know from you that come together to help with a merit-based award. I would not say that a statement of purpose tends to influence a merit-based award as much as it does a decision to admit.
I have got admission from the two universities with the different scholarships. Now, how to choose? I'm confused.
I'm sorry, what was the question, please?
Yeah, so two admits from the two different universities, two admits.
Oh.
And different scholarship from both the universities. Now he is not able to choose which one to go.
Well, for purpose, if you want to speak with us about that, I often speak with my students about multiple admission decisions and some of the challenges they're facing in deciding where they will ultimately attend. Obviously, I don't know whether these two institutions that admitted you were your top two choices. I don't know where that stands. If these were really the two institutions you most wanted to attend. We don't know, and not that I would ask you to disclose that in this forum, but we don't know what you were offered at each program. But at the end of the day, I believe it comes down to your deciding on the institution that you believe is best for you in terms of the environment, the culture, the program, the way in which you've been treated so far as an applicant, as an admitted student. Have you had a chance to visit the campus, take a tour of the campus, talk with current students, take part in some of the admitted student activities that have been offered to you? As you do that, hopefully one of these two options will start to emerge as the one of greater interest. But if you want to talk about that, we that's part of our mentoring. We talk with students about any part of this process, applying financial aid, making an enrollment decision. We are happy to talk with you about any of that if we can.
How easy or difficult for direct entry into MS PhD program, integrated program?
It is difficult, not impossible. Again, when we're talking partly a PhD program, when that's part of what we're talking about here, the competition is going to be very stiff. The PhD application process is the most competitive of all, or the doctoral, I should say, whether it's a PhD, an EDD, a PsyD, a LLD, whatever. That is the most competitive of all application processes. So there will be heavy competition, which is, again, why building a profile as you go through your undergraduate experience can be critical. But don't despair. Don't assume that you don't have a chance. If you believe you have some of the qualifications they're looking for, then I would say give it a try. But you just need to remember that the competition is the heaviest for a PhD program. And of course, even if it's part of a joint. Now, one thing that could happen, they may tell you that they're going to admit you to the MS part of the program, but that they can't let you know yet about the PhD part until they see how well you perform. That's a possibility. Some applicants, if I may mention something that's not exactly what you asked about, some applicants apply to a PhD program, but when the committee gets back with them, they will say, we don't know if we can admit you to our PhD program right now, but we'd like to know if you would consider our master's program. So that's there's a couple of different ways this might play out.
Yeah, that's true. Last question. Can we ask Institute for scholarship upgrade or increase?
Yes, you can. There's a whole way to go about that. And maybe in my next webinar on financial aid, or maybe on the 22nd of August, I can talk a little more about what to do but for purposes of this time together, let me just say, if you would like to possibly see if you could get a larger scholarship award, what you do is you reach out to the person who admitted you, whatever name is on that notice, the online notice you got on the portal or in the mail, whoever signed your admission letter, and you reach out to them. Now, you want to do this very carefully. The first thing you want to do is thank them twice. You want to thank them for admitting you, and you want to thank them for the generous scholarship they've already given you, because not everyone gets one. So you want to start out thanking them. Then you could say something like, I just wondered if there's any possibility to revisit, that's a key word, to revisit my scholarship award. And if you feel you want to explain why you're asking them to do that, you could say, I've been admitted to several programs. There's nothing, you don't want to name names, but you can say, I've been admitted to some other programs, and I'm trying to make a decision here, and financial aid is part of that decision. Is there any chance of reconsidering my scholarship award? And if so, what can I do to help? What could I provide? And there's a chance they might say, yes, we will. And by the way, if they do, you will never lose what you already have. They're not going to come back to you and say, oh, we made a mistake. You were given $50,000. We meant $30,000. Oh, no. You keep whatever you have. That's given. That will never change. But it's possible there could be an increase. So yes, you can ask. as long as you do it respectfully and properly.
One more question, that is the last. If I am awarded a scholarship, do I need to maintain minimum GPA to get in the next or subsequent years?
Yes and no. Yes, if that's what if they tell you that, if they say your award is based on maintaining a 3.0 GPA or overall B average. If they say that, yes. There are some scholarships where there is not a required GPA in order to keep it. That strictly depends on the instructions or the explanation you will be given when you've been notified about that award. Good question.
Yeah. That's all. I think we have finished off the questions. It's really a great session and great question and answer. I think we got a variety of the questions and all. It's really a big concern and a big area of the questions. And it is very subjective. So I think universities are trying their best to provide as much financial aid to the students. But definitely it is our duty also to really do our research well. And that's what Dr. Donald Martin always say, do your research well. And it applies not only for admissions, but for the funding and the scholarship also. There are opportunities lying everywhere. You have to go research and grab those opportunities. So thank you very much again, Dr. Donald Martin, for such a wonderful session. Wish all the students great. And we'll see in the next when we have the revamp, and be ready with the questions all throughout or any topic of the which we have covered already, or maybe new things you want to know. Be ready with these questions, and Dr. Donald Martin will be very, very happy to answer each and every of your questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presence. Thanks.